Thank you to Steve and AgroVision for your really positive welcome message. It sets us up nicely for today as innovation is a theme at the heart of this year's Asiafruit Congress On programme. So welcome everyone to this opening session of Asiafruit Congress On, and thank you to our sponsor of this session, Timuto. My name's John Hay, editor of Asiafruit magazine, and I manage our programme for Asiafruit Congress On. On behalf of the whole team here at FruitNet, I'm delighted you could join us today, wherever you are in the world. That's one of the great things about going digital, and it's the theme of this opening session. Asiafruit Congress is going digital this year, and we want to look at how Asia's fresh produce business has been going digital too. We'll begin the session with a focus on retail and consumers. Digital routes to shoppers have become vital in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll look at how the growth of e-commerce and the digitization of physical retail have both really accelerated in Asian food retail this year. We'll then move upstream to explore digital routes to farmers. We'll look at how world-leading seed company Syngenta is using digital in China to launch vegetable varieties to millions of farmers across the country. And we'll wrap up the session with a focus on digitalizing the whole supply chain. We hear more and more about blockchain and the role it can play to create end-to-end supply chain transparency. Gary Lowe, Chief of Timuto, will be talking to Chris White about how blockchain can solve many of the issues in today's supply chain. But first, let's jump into retail. Market research giant Kantar has published some really insightful reports on fresh food retail in Asia. And we're delighted to have Kantar Consulting's Annabelle Robertson with us today. Annabelle is Kantar's retail sales and shopper practice lead for Southeast Asia. And it's a region that's seen dynamic growth in online retail since COVID struck. So I'd now like to welcome Annabelle to get us underway with a look at how digital is reshaping food retail in Asia.
Hello everyone, I'm delighted to be here today. My name is Annabelle Robertson and I'm the Retail Sales and Shopper Lead for Kantar's Consulting Division in Southeast Asia. I'm going to talk today about new tracks for Asia's fresh produce. So we know, of course, that there's a digital movement within retail, but how is fresh produce placed within that? And what are we already seeing happen across Asia? To start off, we all know there's been a rapid expansion of e-commerce across Asia, but of course, COVID has accelerated this dramatically. And it's been, to quote, like adding jet fuel to an already exploding segment of retail. More people than ever are doing their shopping online or using online touchpoints at some point in their purchase. And to illustrate this, 185 million households across Asia bought groceries on e-commerce for the first time this year. Moreover, in Southeast Asia, people are expected to make wary returns to physical stores, even if countries are lifting their national lockdowns. And as we can see there, they are 1.5 times less likely to go out in the future as compared to their American counterparts. So we're seeing a massive change in behaviors that will also impact expectations for how people will shop in the future. And therefore, what retailers and suppliers need to be doing to reach consumers going forward. As well as accelerating e-commerce, COVID has caused many other shifts, and one of the ones that I want to talk about today is the rise of interest in fresh produce and also attention to where our food is coming from. So to take a couple of examples, demand for fresh produce has grown by over 400% in the Philippines year on year as consumers became more aware of health. They were opting for fresh over canned and frozen products, with health and hygiene cited as the main driver of this shift, perhaps unsurprising given the long lockdown. In China, we saw a surge in fresh food orders during Chinese New Year and the COVID outbreak, and JD.com reported a 450% uplift in vegetable sales. And then the interest in provenance and where our food has come from is becoming increasing. So in Australia, more than 80% say that their preference for local brands or products has increased since the outbreak began. So it's this field to farm mentality. People are now really taking pride in local produce, viewing it as safer, better for you, sustainable. And we're seeing this trend across Asia. So there's huge momentum, big opportunity for fresh produce, and digital is going to be key to elevating it further. When we think about the path to purchase for a shopper, the role of digital technologies is becoming larger, and they're now being used to optimize touch points at every stage of the journey. It's of course more complex than this, but just to highlight a few areas, we're already seeing digital in the O2O omni-channel path to purchase. So right from awareness, using platforms such as Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, videos, health blogs to inspire, and then search as well, optimizing search to attract shoppers to websites, platform reviews, whilst doing research. Right through to consideration, so using the mobile app to browse, research more, compare products, both in-store and online. And then finally through to purchase. So in-store, if you decide to shop in physical stores, you may be using digital payment methods or increasingly contactless checkout machines, particularly as people are concerned about safety in stores and hygiene. This is becoming more prevalent. And then online, ordering and same-day delivery is a massive enabler for fresh, as it's overcoming some of those barriers to purchasing fresh food online. So digital is present at practically every phase in the shopper journey, so it needs to be optimized. Particularly for fresh produce, it's key to any physical store. It's usually the first thing that you see when you enter a store. It's at the front of the store. So these categories need to capitalize on digital to replicate that excitement and experience around fresh categories in the omni-channel journey. I mentioned the rise in interest around transparency of where our food comes from and the quality. So blockchain technology is being used increasingly by supermarkets, Walmart, Alibaba, many more, in food supply chain management as an easy and accurate way to trace products back to their source. But it can also be used to provide consumers with information on products around anything from whether it's been ethically sourced to food standard compliance, expiry date. One of the barriers to purchasing fresh food online is that consumers want to check expiry dates and choose the product themselves for quality. So this tracking and traceability is one of the ways that it's easy to help alleviate that concern, particularly at a time like now when we want to be able to trace food even more than usual. Technology is speeding that up and simplifying this process as well. So legacy methods would take up to 7 days to trace. Blockchain tracing is 2 seconds. And it's a win-win, helping retailers get the freshest products with confidence around where they've been, but for the shopper to have that same confidence, as well as a better and more seamless shopping experience. I have a few examples here that we've pulled out around where digitalization in retail is already accelerating fresh retail. And I'm sure there'll be plenty more as we go through the day. So the first one is around wet market delivery. So even the most traditional businesses, such as wet markets, have started offering online delivery services. This started very early on in the COVID outbreak in Singapore. So how does it work? Shoppers order on Tata Fresh app, drivers go to the market and make the purchases on the shopper's behalf, and groceries are then purchased and packed on the day of delivery to ensure maximum freshness. So it's ticking the boxes: speed, freshness, convenience. The second example is from Australia. So Woolworths, they had to limit the online shopping to those who needed priority assistance. So other customers were able to use the Woolworths app to prepare their shop in advance and limit their time spent in store. So among its functions, you could see where to find products in your local store, and you could organize your shopping list by aisle, so making it more efficient and therefore safer and quicker. And the final example is a new retail example. So of course, this isn't new, but it's still leading the charge in terms of the O2O shopping experience, blurring the lines between off and online, and using digital, enabling shoppers to shop in store and have delivered at home or vice versa. And this is where the fresh produce categories really shine. So shoppers are able to pick out their own seafood, for example, which is then freshly prepared and can be eaten in store or delivered. So they can also use the Hummer app in store and scan QR codes to check on the provenance of the products before they select them. So best of both worlds: choose your products, you know the quality of the products, and you can then have them delivered home. As I said, this isn't new, but it's a trend that provides huge opportunity, particularly for fresh categories. So whistle stop tour, but hopefully some food for thought as we go into today. There is huge momentum for fresh, but as well as some challenges as we navigate this increasingly digital world. Consumers are increasingly looking for freshness, locally produced food, healthy produce, and shoppers are continuing to expect speed, convenience in their shopping experience. So I would just urge you to think about where are the biggest opportunities to capitalize on digital to reach consumers for your business as we go through today. And with that, I'll hand back to John.
Thank you, Annabelle, for joining us today and for that really insightful scene setter to the session. You've certainly given us plenty of food for thought here. Now, I wanted to begin our discussion with e-commerce. And in China, e-commerce already had a strong foothold in fresh produce sales pre-pandemic. And that trend's only accelerated since COVID. But in Southeast Asia, e-commerce has been much slower to gain traction in fresh produce sales. Traditional food retailing like street markets and wet markets, as well as the modern supermarket trade, are very dominant in fresh. But COVID's obviously been a catalyst for change there. We've seen people in key Southeast Asian markets buying fresh produce online for the first time, including the older demographic. You mentioned a wariness to return to physical stores across several Southeast Asian countries. Where would you say that's most pronounced, and how do you see it playing out? I mean, do you think these consumers will stick with buying fresh produce online now that they're used to the convenience?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think the caution to return to physical stores seems to be widespread across Asia. Consumers are adapting and adopting e-commerce where they may not have previously. And we're certainly seeing older and less adventurous consumers venturing online, welcoming the security and convenience that technology provides at this time. So you mentioned China, but even there with high penetration of e-commerce, we've seen older demographics explode in e-commerce. So over Chinese New Year, 4 times more grocery orders were placed by users born in the 1960s. Than to normal on Alibaba, and a huge increase as well in anyone over the age of 40 during the COVID period. So that's in a high penetration market. In Southeast Asia, we're seeing that same shift. So while right now it's around 70% of online shoppers are below the age of 50, and they're mid to high income earners. And what we're expecting is by 2025, this will look dramatically different, and we'll have a considerably higher range of people over the age of 50.
Yeah.
Just to the second part of your question around whether consumers will stick to these new behaviors or if they'll revert. I think the rapid expansion of e-commerce is causing other channels to lose share, that's for sure, and I would expect this to continue as behaviors stay the same. But more and more the growth is omni-channel. It's about the omni-channel shopper. So it's about using more channels, and it's about blurring those channels, so using them in conjunction with each other rather than just a clear shift from physical to digital. So it's around the behaviors around them using the channels in different ways they shop, and regardless of whether it's online or offline. And I think that will be the real opportunity for fresh to get into more baskets, regardless of the channel, and grow.
Now, physical or offline retailers obviously faced major challenges over the past year in Asia with lockdowns and social distancing and so on. And yet it's such an important sales and distribution channel for fresh produce. How do you see the future for those conventional retail formats like markets and supermarkets? And what is the potential impact here for fresh produce sales?
Yeah, hypermarkets have for sure been badly affected, but elsewhere there are pockets of growth in offline. So proximity stores have really been the winners here. Indonesia, traditional trade value grew by 10%, for example. So there is growth in the physical stores. And e-commerce is really still a small part in Southeast Asia. North Asia, it's much bigger. But the physical store, brick and mortar, traditional trade still have a very important role. Having said that, it's changed dramatically. So for shopping experience, how the stores are laid out, they have to have more social distancing measures, so that removes a lot of the experience. There's less window shopping, less exploration. So visibility is more important than ever. And you really need to get people hooked very quickly, because people want to spend less time, they want to do fewer trips. So it's getting more trips. They're spending more on their trips, but there are fewer of them. So in terms of things to focus on now, it's getting that visibility, it's remembering the importance of activation, clear communication, packaging. Those are the important things now in the physical environment, given all the measures.
Annabelle, you also explained how, the traditional food retail like wet markets and mom and pop shops have also been going digital during COVID. They've been partnering with on-demand delivery platforms and with taxi and ride-hailing services to manage online deliveries. You mentioned Tata Fresh in Singapore, and GrabMart is another good example of this across Southeast Asia. Can you explain a bit more about how these models and services are working and developing? And do you see these really flourishing from here? Do you think they'll help to also bring more consumers from younger demographics perhaps into buying from wet markets and those traditional channels due to the convenience?
Yeah, I do see them flourishing for sure. And Grab is one example of what we're now thinking about as super apps. So in the same way that Alibaba is in China, Grab is really taking on that role and it's becoming a super app. So it's trying to deliver a whole range of services. And GrabMart is just one of those. And what it's doing is it's connecting the consumers and the businesses to each other, but it's supported by an established delivery infrastructure that it already has. So for business owners, what it's doing is it's enabling them to get consumer reach immediately, and it's already got the resources and the tools to do that. In terms of who it's going to help shop, I do believe it will help younger demographics shop in, say, wet markets, for example. But it's young, more savvy consumers that are really driving the tech shift as well. So I think once they get established on the likes of GrabMart or Tata Fresh, it's also then going to enable the older demographics, and it will just explode from there. And what it means is it's not really about whether you're buying from a wet market or cold storage. It doesn't matter, because it's about making sure that the products are where the consumer is, rather than the consumer having to go to where the products are. And that's the shift that we're seeing happen as well.
Right. Now, you explained very well the digital touch points in the path to purchase, the need for marketers to use those social media platforms to create awareness, search optimization to capture shoppers while they're doing their research and so on. It's a very different world to the traditional linear path to purchase with in-store promotions and sampling. What are the most effective ways, would you say, for fresh produce marketers to use these digital touch points? And can they be used to create the same kind of excitement that fresh produce generates in physical stores?
I think it's really easy to get excited about digital and marketing opportunities because there are so many, but I would say if you're starting from scratch, the first thing is to get the basics in place. So just as you would in a physical environment, you don't want to drive traffic to pages that don't have the fundamentals, like clear, concise, consumer-focused content, whereas the produce from credentials, is it organic? And then there's more inspiring stuff on product pages like imagery, short form videos. That perfect screen is the first thing to get right before you can really think about the exciting marketing opportunities. And then I think you can start concentrating on driving traffic to those pages, whether it's through search engine optimization or it's through campaigns to get people from outside sites, but also within the sites to your product pages and through to purchase. And as I say, I don't think we're going purely online. We're omni-channel shoppers. So it's making sure that our digital environment drives purchase in the physical environment and vice versa. So you can still use the physical stores to create that experience and that excitement, but making sure it's complemented by your digital presence is very important.
Good. And on a final note, you've highlighted really a very positive outlook for fresh produce with the growing health trend during the pandemic. What would you say are the best ways of capitalizing on this? Is it about linking fresh produce to immunity, or more about framing the health of fresh produce around and pleasure and fitness?
Ooh, yeah, good question. I think it obviously depends on the category, specific category, but I think right now the main concern we're hearing from consumers is around safety and hygiene. So yes, everyone wants to be healthier and fitter, but the key concerns that we've seen across Asia are around health and safety and hygiene. So I think that's the one to play on in the short term and make sure you're getting over those potential barriers to purchase there, and then focus on where your category really has its strengths, whether it's immunity or fitness.
Great. Well, thanks, Annabelle. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for in our discussion today, but thank you very much again for joining us to share your expert insights, and we look forward to seeing how these digital tracks for fresh produce evolve in Asia.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Great. Now we stay on the theme of retail with a focus on China. China's been blazing a trail in e-commerce and the digitization of offline retail. And e-commerce giant JD.com is leading the charge on both fronts. JD's made big gains in selling fresh produce during the pandemic as consumers pivoted to buying groceries online during lockdown. But it's also made exciting moves to digitize offline retail in China. It's expanded its chain of high-tech supermarkets, 7Fresh, with new stores and formats. And it's also moved into neighborhood or community retail, setting up a new franchise model to upgrade community mom and pop stores. The franchise model operates under the Jingsuan Haoguo brand, meaning JD's select quality of fruits. Our team at Asiafruit China have been speaking to Yuna Wong, purchasing manager of JD Fresh, about the company's latest moves.
Actually, digitized offline retail help us to achieve refined operation management, knowing better about our consumers' needs through the data analysis. On November 4th, JD.com cooperated with JD2Home launched a strategy called Super Convenience Partnership Strategy with other supermarket brands, overall to power digitized offline retail. JD.com will share our omni-channel infrastructure capability with our key partners. Through the intelligent supply chain support, digital solutions, and integrated ecological marketing. We also launched a One Day One City promotion with our key partners, building up the consumption scene through the interconnection between online and offline to reach more consumers and improve consumers' consumption experience via the JD2Home 1-hour delivery service. Our core concept of modernizing conventional mom and pop shop is to fully utilize JD.com high-tech support and the supply chain advantage to those existing conventional community shops in case to improve those product quality and save the additional costs. A challenge for us at the beginning is to figure out the real consumers' needs in different communities. The target consumer segment is different from our current self-operated business model. And on the other hand, the franchise project is a kind of retail format which is the closest to consumers. After more and more shops joining in, this will expand our procurement skill for sure, and also strengthen JD Fresh brand power as well. JD.com owns the largest e-commerce logistics infrastructure in China, with covering 99% of the country population, and we have already achieved rates of over 90% of order being delivered same or the next day. A digital supply chain system helps us to increase the efficiency, like we have 25 Asian #1 logistics parks with the most advanced logistics centers in Asia. and robotics technology is deployed to pick, stock, and move goods in various fulfillment locations. We are the world's first e-commerce company to commercially deploy drones to rural deliveries, especially for the COVID-19 crisis. Autonomous delivery robots help us to achieve the delivery in Wuhan City during the lockdown period.
Thank you, Yuna and JD, for talking us through the company's latest moves. It's clear JD has been one of the winners from the COVID crisis, and the company is now investing more to develop their fresh produce supply chain and operations. So it'll be really interesting to see how that all unfolds. So we've looked at digital routes to consumers. Now let's look at digital routes to farmers. World-leading seed company Syngenta has a big presence in China with a huge customer base, and it's using digital to reach millions of farmers and launch its vegetable varieties. Zhou Qin is head of vegetable seeds for Syngenta Group China, and we're very pleased to have her join us from Beijing today to discuss the work the group has been doing. After her presentation, our Asiafruit China editor, Yusin Yang, will talk to Qin about some of the challenges of introducing these digital solutions to farmers. First, though, I'd like to welcome Zhou Qin to give us the lowdown on what Syngenta has been doing.
Hello everyone, this is Zhou Qin from Beijing, China. I'm the head of vegetable seed business in Syngenta Group China. It's my great honor to have this opportunity to present and share you how we have been doing on digitization in vegetable seed industry, and especially after COVID-19 crisis this year. Firstly, I would like to briefly introduce our business in China. We have been operating in China vegetable seeds for more than 20 years. Now we have an end-to-end team with 200 employees to serve more than 100,000 growers. We are selling around 90 varieties and launching 12 new products across 15 crop species every year. In China vegetable seed industry, Syngenta takes leading position in sweet corn, red bullhorn type hot pepper, and seedless watermelon. Strong position in other crops like tomato, sweet pepper, broccoli, spinach, and watermelon, which reflects our ability of bringing in innovation. We are proud of what we are doing, that is to meet demand and create value for whole value chain customers, including growers, processors, supply chain, retail market, and consumers, as well as to anticipate the changing needs of our world through our seed. Since COVID-19, it is confirmed that digitization has become a fast-forward trend. Digital tools become increasingly popular solution in many industries. Consumers and business in China have accelerated their use of digital technologies as a result of COVID-19. We have been communicating with growers through WeChat. We have a WeChat mini program associated with the company account. The mini program was designed initially for growers to identify the real seed from Syngenta versus copycat. Lately, the functions have been expanded to incorporate product catalog, online customer service, cultivation tips, and farmer meeting support. We have communicated with our channel partners, including distributors, dealers, young plant raisers, and seed shops, through digital tools. In particular, our annual event, Shouguang Seed Export, in April this year. Instead of physical visiting our product demo, we have live streamed the event to showcase our new product field performance. It was a 2 hours event. We had 80,000 views We have also communicated our watermelon fresh produce product with consumers through TikTok video posting. The objective was to help growers who growing our watermelon seed sell the fresh produce. It was interesting and a nice experience to touch base with consumers, to get some facts, how the consumer demand pooling activity helps seed business. With regard to meet the demand of consumer, Syngenta Group China has already successful business case in strawberry. MAP represents modern agriculture platform. Is the new business model linking between growers, retailers, and consumers, certifies and ensures the quality of fresh produce, will provide healthy, safe, and tasty food and convenience to consumers. In order to do it, digitization set up the foundation to empower the closed loop of from farm to table. We have been working to deliver Syngenta innovative vegetable product to you, like our cauliflower, yum tomato, and fresh sweet corn. At last, very happy to share with you our excitement on digitization practice, and hopefully Syngenta would have more collaboration with the partners. Thank you.
Hi, Zhou. Thank you for your presentation. It's very interesting to see the progress your company has made in digitizing the operations in China. To dive a little bit deeper into this topic, we always talk about how Chinese people are very tech savvy and how they can literally do everything on their smartphones, but that applies mostly to the younger urban population, doesn't it? I mean, the rural farming population, on the other hand, in China, they're perhaps a bit older and perhaps have a more conventional lifestyle. So we're curious about the digital solutions you mentioned. They are really innovative and they're great. But has it been challenging when you introduce them to the farmers? Or is it perhaps the pandemic that we have now globally that is forcing the farmers to adapt quickly?
It depends on which type of customer we are introducing to. Normally, if it was targeting high-tech growers, channel partners, and consumers, it would be easier to promote and to be accepted. For large number of smallholder growers, they are our end user of the seed. It requires, on one side, the digital tool should be very efficient, effective, and user-friendly. On the other side, our team should help grower to implement those digital tools during our campaign activities. The pandemic restricted people physical moving, but also promote everyone more rely on digital tools. Like other industries and companies do, Syngenta vegetable team in China also accelerate to introduce and upgrade our digital tool to our customers.
That's great to hear. When we talk about fresh produce production, fruit and vegetables in China, we know that this is a sector that's still largely in the process of modernization, and there are many problems. For instance, getting reliable planting materials and in crop protection measures as well. Do you think these new digital tools that we are seeing now will change the farming practices in China for the better?
I believe digital tools has big influence to farming practice in China to address the issue like shortage of labor, cost increase, environmental impact. Also, to improve production efficiency, improve the quality and the fresh produce, and help growers to sell what they produce.
And lastly, before we let you go, Zhou, as you said in your presentation, Syngenta has been very active in China for many, many years, but Syngenta Group China was recently established in June this year. Can you tell us what are your major plans in the China market with this new entity in the next few years?
Syngenta Group China has big ambitions to grow our business in China, especially for vegetable seed. We target to enhance our market share. We will continuously to bring innovation to Chinese market to better serve our customers. We also plan to strengthen collaboration with all our stakeholders, implement our acquisition strategy to play a role in helping modernize Chinese agriculture.
Right, and we'll surely follow the development very closely. Again, thank you very much, Josephine, for talking to us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yuxin. Thank you, Joxin, for that very interesting analysis about how things work in the field. And I thought what we do now is look at that digitalization of the supply chain. And I think one of the favorite words, certainly, that we're all talking about these days is that one of blockchain and what blockchain means. And I still scratch my head and try to understand what blockchain exactly means. So we're going to devote the next, until we break in about 10, 15 minutes to this issue of blockchain, and hear from Timuto, who are, well, it seems to me, one of the people I hear about talking about blockchain all the time. I'll be speaking to their CEO and founder, Gary Lowe, in a minute, but let's hear from the company first with a short presentation about what blockchain is all about.
Hi, my name is Gary and I'm from Timuto. Timuto is basically a trade solution company that we're trying to solve a problem that sort of been plaguing the industry for a while. Well, fundamentally, in a lot of the business that we do is trying to bring fruits from one country into Southeast Asia. And one of the biggest problems we have is that we don't know what was packed, or even if we do know what was packed, it was basically an information that was kept at a pack house. And then when it was received in the markets that we go in, for example, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, the Philippines, we actually then have issues on the ground. And this kind of communications have actually been going on for quite a while, and we don't really know which one is telling the truth. So the custody of truth became a big problem, and the burden of proof became a problem.
So this has resulted in the problems of global food waste and all the other trade implications like disputes and the lack of access to financial services. All this has resulted because of the lack of visibility and the inability to actually operate where we can see data.
So the solution that we actually came about with is actually to find a way to put all the information into a platform that's on the blockchain, and then so that the custody of truth is now on the blockchain, and now the burden of proof is no longer on one or the other. We think that the problems of the messy middle, which is the problem that we're trying to solve, is really at the pack house level. So what this system really does is to basically be able to take a picture, and then with the picture, we actually now be able to now see the image before the box is closed, and then we can actually track every single box. And by serializing it, we can now be able to then put the serialized box into a pallet, and then we go into a transport order, and it's now linked to your purchase order. And with that part of it, we are allowing to put the documentation part into one QR code so that we all can have the shared information in itself. So this system basically allows us to take the picture, scan that information as we go along the system. And then on the receiving side, if there is a problem, all they have to do is just scan the box, take a picture of it, and we could immediately match with it. Then on top of it, we could actually see the purchase order and the invoice and the packing list on top of it as well. So one of the things that we want to do is to make sure that even on the level of communication is to actually have the fruit. When you scan it with your phone, you are able now to actually understand who is the one who did the work, see the details about the information, making sure that it's safe, and at the same time to be able to communicate, give us a 5-star rating, and so that actually make this world a little bit more connected and close the loop, right, between the farmer and the consumer to actually say, oh, how good this fruit is, or how bad this fruit is. At least we can have the feedback. the transparency that we talk about, and actually get some data into our industry. I think this industry has been working really hard to try to get the data into a platform, and I think this is where I hope Timuto can actually help.
Well, that's fascinating stuff. And I'm joined by Gary Lowe. Nice to see you, Gary. You're in Singapore. I'm in London. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good morning to you.
Gary, it's fascinating that the technology you've shown there. But the thing I'd like to know is that is the fresh produce industry really ready for this kind of technology? What do you think?
Well, I think it is. I think it's ready, and I think it's a need. And most of the time, maybe the adoption isn't something that people are just going to run out and just grab it. I think people just want to understand. And it will probably be one where we do have to use the numerous case studies that we're doing right now, and then basically share that kind of information so that people would actually know how this technology can be used. Because I think technology, blockchain sounds like big words and people are not used to it. But I think showing it in a manner that when you do it on a day-to-day, then I think maybe the adoption will be much better.
Now, one of the big issues that everybody in the industry faces is the question of cost. I mean, you know, costs in, as it were, the cost of the products that we buy, or the price we pay rather at point of sale, is really relatively low. When I look at other products in store, and I look at fresh fruits and vegetables, I think, wow, how can they stay so incredibly cheap? Actually, at the end of the day, the margins are very, very low. And you go to people and say, right, invest in my technology. Surely they face a problem because they say, well, how can I afford to do so? Is your argument with them that you kind of need to make this investment because without this investment, your losses will be far higher?
Yeah, I mean, and Chris, that's a great point. So I think, first of all, when we came out to do this, it's not really one where it's more like a technology person trying to solve a problem of the trade. I think the way we look at it was more from our trade perspective, and knowing that everybody wants traceability, but nobody wants to pay for it is one of the basis of how we actually approach it. So to put it quite bluntly, it costs you about $200 more per container if you talk about using this system. And what it really solves is, for example, if there was a dispute, it would be 5 to 10%, which is the value of the container. Could be, 10% means, $5,000. And if you talk about time and efficiencies, we used to be able to sort of like get we get our team to come together, and just to get one girl to play documentation, it's going to cost you a lot more. Well, this basically allows you to take away the manpower and the time. You're now able to see a lot of this information that in the past we used to have somebody trying to coordinate between the finance team together with the sales team, with the shipping team and the document team, and they're all operating in silo, and just one manpower cost is really what we are trying to replace, and it's probably cheaper than that.
Now, I can understand absolutely the logic that this makes in terms of claims and following the quality of your product through the supply chain. But what are the other arguments you make with people when you say, look, you really need this technology? What are the other key challenges to kind of driving adoption of your solutions to businesses?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Chris. I think from both sides of the coin, right? One side of the coin is towards the farmer side or the production side. As most of us in the trade, most of the times when harvest comes is one season, and then when the season ends, we clean the shade again, and then the next season starts. No one keeps the data. Nobody remembers what happened 2-3 years or 2 seasons ago. So this is where it becomes very important. You now can see what you packed, where, when, how it was sold, and maybe the channels where certain channels didn't work. Now, on the flip side of it, you can now basically get the data in terms of consumer and consumer feedback and basically the sell-through. And you can go really deep because you can go not just to the wholesale market, you can go to all the way to the various markets, right down to the end consumer in itself. So I think this kind of information that when we make a business decision or invest in new areas, I think this kind of data is going to be quite invaluable.
Now, does that presuppose that every, as it were, link in the chain is, how should I say, ready to share this data? Or is it something that you can just get without having to have those agreements through the chain, if you see what I mean?
Yeah. You know, this is a very fundamental question that people ask, right? Because the way the system has been built, it's always with the buyer and the seller. And both buyers and sellers have a lot of information. So the way the chain works is making sure that the key player, which are buyers and sellers, upload all the auxiliary information so that they can then share it down the chain. So it's always A, B, B, C, C, D, E, F, right? And then every part of a transaction is now passed on. And you can keep the data private to the level that you want to share, because everything is basically about data privacy and making sure that you don't share your invoice and making sure that everybody don't see everything that you don't want them to see.
Sure, of course. Now, but the last, as it were, link in the chain is me, the consumer. I get that avocado that you showed in your video and I slice it open and I think, oh, it's not what I expected. The quality isn't what I expected. Do you think blockchain could reach as far as the consumer's kitchen, that I then share the data back to you?
Yeah, in fact, that's one of the key premise of how the system was built. The QR code was basically allowing you to then scan and then says, give a 1-star rating. And then you says that, oh, we got a reply from Chris saying that the avocado wasn't expected, you know, and we say, where do you buy it from? And, you know, what was the issue? Now that when it was packed, how it was sent to Chris, now actually is captured. In the past, as you know, we sort of like have to jump a lot of hurdles just to work with the retailer. But right now we are actually working with Chris in his kitchen, opening up his avocado, and now he can write a feedback. And then we say, oh, sorry, Chris, about the experience. Let us make sure that we'll do a better job the next time. So I think from brand owners as well as suppliers, I think that kind of communication and closing the loop is going to be key in going forward.
And does that mean that the consumer, in a sense, brings the retailer into the game as well? Is that the way you see things working?
Yeah, in fact, one of the ways we've been doing this is to ensure that, like, for example, a promotion collaborating with these supermarket. I mean, first we ask, Chris, where do you buy it? You say, I bought it from this supermarket. And then you can actually use it and change it into like a lucky draw or vouchers to the same retailers, encouraging your customers that buys your product going back to the retailers, right? So it's not like a two-way thing. Rather than in the past, it's always driven by what the retailer says and then they deal with the consumer. But in this situation, we're now having consumer going back to our retailers to basically buy the things again.
Gary, it's fascinating stuff. Thank you so much for joining me today from Singapore. Nice to speak to you again.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for the opportunity.
Good. Well, that brings us to the end of this first session of our first ever Asiafruit Congress online. I'm here in London, and I know you are all over the world watching us, so keep with us. We'll be taking a short break now for the next 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll come back at 1/4 the hour to look at the whole area of green, the green future and the new production models, with a really fascinating series of presentations and discussions about this area. So join us in 15 minutes.